What happens after 30 June? South Africa stands at a crossroads. The countdown is almost over. 30 June is approaching fast, and South Africa is heading toward a moment that has captured national attention, online debate, and growing political tension. And now one question is being repeated everywhere. What happens after 30 June? Over the past weeks, this date has taken on a life of its own in South Africa's immigration debate. Not because it is an official government deadline, but because it has been widely discussed, shared, and amplified by protest movements, online communities, and political commentators. It has appeared in marches, social media posts, community discussions, and heated arguments about immigration enforcement, border control, and national pressure points. For some, it represents frustration that has been building for years. For others, it represents misinformation or misunderstanding about how government systems actually work. But regardless of perspective, one thing is clear. The date has become symbolic. And symbolic dates often carry more power than official ones. To understand why 30 June matters to so many people, you have to understand the environment it emerged from. South Africa continues to face major structural challenges. High unemployment, economic pressure, strained public services, and ongoing debates about immigration and border management. These issues have created frustration across communities, especially among people who feel that opportunities are becoming more limited. In that environment, immigration has become one of the most sensitive and debated topics in the country. Some groups argue that enforcement of existing laws is not strong enough. They say illegal immigration places additional pressure on jobs, housing, healthcare, and public infrastructure. They believe the system is not being properly enforced and that stronger action is needed. But at the same time, government officials and legal institutions have repeatedly emphasized that immigration must be handled through lawful processes. They have warned against individuals or groups attempting to enforce rules themselves or create their own deadlines. They argue that while public concern is valid, solutions must come through formal policy, not public pressure campaigns. And this is where the tension begins to grow. Because expectations and reality are not always aligned. One of the key misunderstandings surrounding 30 June is the idea that something automatic will happen on that day. But in reality, no official law states that anything changes on that date. There is no automatic policy switch. No immediate mass enforcement trigger. No sudden system reset. When 30 June arrives, South Africa does not transform overnight. Instead, it continues to operate within the same legal and institutional framework it had the day before. But that does not mean nothing changes at all. Because perception can be just as powerful as policy. And once a date becomes widely known, it begins to influence behavior, expectations, and public conversation. As the date approaches, reactions across the country have become more divided. Some communities express strong support for stricter immigration enforcement, saying their daily experiences reflect growing pressure on jobs and services. They argue that enforcement must be stronger, faster, and more consistent. For them, 30 June represents a moment where long-standing frustrations finally gain visibility. But other voices warn that the situation is becoming increasingly tense and sensitive. They argue that immigration is being blamed for deeper structural problems, including unemployment and inequality, which existed long before current migration trends. They also warn that rising tensions can lead to misunderstanding, misinformation, and in some cases, social conflict. Meanwhile, government officials continue to urge calm and legal compliance. They emphasize that South Africa is a constitutional democracy, and that all disputes must be handled through lawful and institutional processes. This creates a situation where three realities exist at the same time. Public frustration, government regulation, and rising expectations shaped by online narratives. But beyond the debate itself, there is a deeper layer to this story. Because this is not only about immigration. It is about trust. Trust in systems. Trust in enforcement. trust in fairness, and trust in whether institutions are responding effectively to public concerns. When trust weakens, symbolic events become more powerful. And that is exactly what has happened here. A date has become a focal point. Not because it changes the law, but because it concentrates emotion. As 30 June approaches, the country finds itself standing at a crossroads shaped by competing pressures. On one side, there are calls for stronger enforcement and clearer control of immigration systems. On the other side, there are warnings about maintaining legal processes, protecting rights, and avoiding escalation. In between those positions sits the broader reality of South Africa's economic and social challenges. Unemployment remains high. Public services remain under pressure. Communities continue to face economic uncertainty. And government institutions continue to balance competing demands. At the same time, migrants living in South Africa remain part of everyday life. Some are documented. Some are not. Some have lived in the country for decades. And many are uncertain about what the future holds as the debate intensifies. This is where the issue becomes more complex than a single headline. Because it is no longer just about movement across borders. It is about how a society manages pressure from multiple directions at once. So what actually happens after 30 June? The most realistic answer is that there is no dramatic single outcome. South Africa will wake up on 1 July still facing the same structural challenges it faced before the date arrived. But the conversation may shift. The issue may move deeper into political debate, policy discussions, and institutional review. There may be renewed calls for stronger enforcement. There may be further protests or public statements. There may be increased political attention on immigration systems and border control. But the underlying challenges will remain. Because issues like unemployment, governance, and economic pressure are not solved by symbolic dates. They are long-term structural problems that require long-term responses. And that is why the importance of 30 June may not lie in what happens on the day itself, but in what continues after it. Because once the countdown ends, the conversation does not disappear. It evolves. It moves into policy discussions, into community debates, into political decision-making, and into everyday life. And in many ways, that may be the real story. Not the date itself, but the aftermath. So the question remains, is 30 June a turning point that will reshape the conversation around immigration in South Africa? Or is it simply another moment in a much longer and more complex national debate? Either way, the countdown is nearly over. And what comes next may define far more than a single date.